Arrow Season 5, Episode 21, Honor Thy Fathers. This is a pretty crazy episode. Getting to the ending was probably the craziest part. Like, seeing what happened with Prometheus and it's like, holy crap, I can't believe that worked. And then we get the promo and the whole next episode is like, you thought that worked, dumbass? And then all this crazy stuff is happening where he has other people outside, potentially killing off the rest of the team. So I was like, wow, that was genius. Because in the episode, I was like, that makes no sense whatsoever. Like, he just, I don't know, he was almost like a philosopher that just came down from heaven, and Chase was just like, wow. And he just gave up everything. And I was like, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. And now it makes a lot more sense that that was just another step in his plan. And it was just absolutely insane. But going through this episode, I really enjoyed what they were doing, where there's this crazy mystery behind this dead body. And it's like, all right, well, early on, they seem to make ties to Oliver and Thea's father. And it's like, well, that can't be true. We have to find the proof that it's not going to be him. That's how Oliver feels. Like, he can't be a killer like me. He may not have been a saint, but he's definitely not a murderer. So I love the way they kind of went about the episode and their sort of differing ideals. The fact that Thea was back, of course, was very awesome. And she mentions really early on when she first comes back, like, I wasn't ready to come back just yet. And so we see that darker side of her is still there when they end up meeting Chase's father's lawyer. And she's kind of, trying to threaten him a little bit. So it's like, it's still there, but it wasn't a big part of this episode. I feel like going into these last two episodes of the season, considering she's in town, I feel like that might actually come up with her just having to, literally fight off people that are trying to kidnap her and kill her, along with the rest of the team. So I'm excited to see how they decide to kind of utilize her finally coming back in these last couple episodes, because she's been missing. It feels like forever, but I think that's because we had a break as well with some of the episodes where she was missing. So it feels like it's been a super long time, since she's actually been in the show. But I'm excited to see how they utilize her story now that she's back in the fold. We have there were a lot of stories going on in this episode. Like, Thea's thing coming back wasn't really like a part of the story. It was just kind of her dynamic with Oliver and her father. So it was less about her going crazy and just more about how they feel about their father and their family in general and who they are and stuff like that. So I certainly like that path. And it was more about Oliver really believing that his father had to be innocent of this murder. And things just get crazy. That they continue on further and further. They get the file from the lawyer. Thea ends up watching it first, and so she tells Oliver, like, you have to watch it. What was really funny about the fact that the dad killed somebody is, like, if there were ever, people already say this enough, where it's like, Arrow, this version of Green Arrow is more like Batman than anything else. I was like, they should have totally changed how he killed that dude, but they had to be on a railing, and he pushes them down into a vat, and I was like, they're trying to connect to Batman at this point, because that made me laugh. I was like, all that makes me think of is the Joker. Like, I've seen that a million times from Batman, and it's their dad fighting with this dude, and then he falls over, and he falls into a big vat, which I guess he couldn't swim, because you wouldn't die from that. I don't know, unless they were heating the concrete, which I'm pretty sure you don't actually do that, but I don't know. I don't make concrete, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure if he just got up, he could just swim right out of that, especially with it being like, it was basically full on liquid. It looked like a milkshake. So I'm like, I don't know. I've never seen concrete look that soft. But just like at the end of that episode, or I guess it was towards the middle, but when Oliver and Diggle were captured, that looked like some milk coming in. I was like, that doesn't look like concrete to me at all. It was just like, it looked too loose to me, but I'm not a concrete worker, so I don't know. But it was just funny. I was like, man, I feel like that guy could have just swum out of that, unless it is like super heated. If that's a new thing with concrete. But I was like, I guess he can't swim. He just fell in and never even struggled. He just went, done. And like, there was nothing else. He just dropped in. There was no struggle or anything. He just went bloop, and disappeared. I was like, wow, that was instantaneous. It was almost like he fell in acid or something, and it just went, and he was gone. So that was really weird to me, that there wasn't even like any sort of struggle. He fell in and he was just gone. And the dad was kind of looking around, and then he's just like, well, I'm out of here. So they, of course, find out the truth that their father truly was the man that murdered this other guy. And really, it wouldn't be considered murder. It was just an accident. They were arguing, and he fell over. But, of course, he hid that because he didn't want to deal with all the madness that came behind it. So it was definitely an interesting story to kind of throw at Oliver from Chase's perspective, where it's like, this is how bad your father was as well. You killed my father for being a bad person, but here's yours. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then he's kind of going about doing something that Chase is going about doing something his father was doing, but on a more extreme scale. It's much worse. So that was definitely entertaining. They're going through with the guy who, I think his name was Samson, so he's the guy who doesn't feel pain. So he was a nice little villain in this episode. He didn't really have like a big thing to do. It was just like he was the villain. It was kind of like, all right, well, let's split up because he gets released, so let's follow him. Let's see what else is happening here. And then of course, it's kind of a decoy trapping them in cement and stuff, so that way Samson could get the weapons and then go to like the final plan towards the end of the episode. But it was decent. He was just the guy. He also got shot. This was the part that didn't make sense to me because I know he can't feel pain. But the part where he was fighting against Renee, and Renee, like, dual wielding, was shooting him, like, straight in his chest. And I was like, I guess you could say he's wearing Kevlar. But I was like, I feel like they should have made a point of that, because just because he can't feel pain doesn't mean he can't fall over and die. Which was another, like, him being shot in general, I was like, they're shooting the crap out of this dude. They shot him a couple times, but especially that part, like, he got shot, like, in the chest area, and that's what I was saying. Like, if they made a point to show he was wearing Kevlar, that would make a difference. But even if it's not vital, if you're shot in the chest multiple times, it's going to become vital. Like, just in general, there's way too much important stuff in your chest. So it was just another weird thing where I was like, he's taking all these hits, and it was just weird. It was just like, I feel like he should be down for the count because he got shot in the chest like 3 times. But it was like, some things you just gotta let go, especially pertaining to that character, because they kind of did that when he first showed up too. Some stuff where it was like, the arrow just shot like straight through him. Even if you can't feel pain, that hits something vital, because that's what Oliver does all the time. And people seem to die from it, so this guy should at least be injured, but like, because he can't feel pain, he just walks away. So, it was like some of those things you just have to let go. But, decent fight sequence. Renee had his own story in this episode, which certainly didn't end like I expected. He's talking with the lawyer, and we find out that he has to actually have like a hearing and stuff, and so he asks Lance for kind of moral support, and they go through the episode and he's freaking out like, I can't put her through that because I have to kind of bring up what happened to her mother and how I hurt her and she doesn't deserve that. And Lance gave a pretty amazing speech. Everything they've done for them is either Renee says something that's super emotional or Lance says something that's super emotional, and all of it has been really good. And this episode was no different. It was like Renee not realizing that he needs to be there, and Lance, telling him why he should show up. It was like, if you don't show up, the only thing she'll think is that you don't actually care about her. It's not that, from your perspective, it's very different because you don't want to bring up horrible things, but she doesn't know any of that right now. She'll just assume you don't want her. So I was like, man, that was a great emotional moment. Everything's good. They go through the battle. They fight the bad guy. They beat up everybody. They have a celebration at the end and everything. And then it cuts to like the next day, and he just doesn't show up for the meeting. And we see Lance texting him like a bunch of different times. It wasn't, maybe we'll see, who knows what happened. But I'm sure we'll get the answer in the next episode. But unless it ties into he was already kidnapped, which would be a really good reason for why he didn't show up. Other than that, it'll just be depressing, because if he hasn't already been kidnapped, and that leads into the next episode, that was just a depressing moment. He was just like, yeah, I couldn't do it. And it's like, wow, that really, really sucks. And either way, unless he kind of reveals that he was, the vigilante wild dog, it probably won't matter, because he can't say like, yeah, I was kidnapped by this person. Or maybe he could, because they don't necessarily have to know that he's a vigilante. But it's just like, hey, I worked on the detail with the mayor, and Chase kidnapped me. So they could totally make it work if that's what ended up happening. And I'm hoping that's the case, because otherwise it's just depressing. But crazy way to end it with that storyline, because I was like, okay, he had the rousing speech, and he seemed like he was listening to Lance, and I was like, all right, he's going to show up and everything will be good. And then he's just not there. So my guess is that he was the first one to be kidnapped, and then it's going to lead into the other characters as well. But man, that was definitely a surprise when I first saw it. It was just like, wow, that's really depressing. So we'll see if that really did happen, if he's already been kidnapped, or if it's just going to end up being even sadder. But definitely a fun episode leading into the final 2. The flashbacks weren't really big in this episode. I think we had, honestly, I think it was like a total of 3 flashbacks. It was the beginning when they're on the plane, the part where they're on the island where They actually walk across the Deathstroke mask, which I thought was cool. And then the end of it, which is where, and I thought this was funny, but Anatoly gives Oliver the super long beard, and I was like, okay, that makes sense, because I was thinking about that, and he was like, people aren't going to believe that there's like a barbershop on the island. And I was like, okay, that explains the crazy epic long beard. So I thought that was pretty funny, but that was pretty good. And maybe there was a fourth one, which is when the dude showed up, Dolph Lundgren. I forgot his villain name, but Dolph Lundgren showed up to punch him in the face. So it turns out that he's not coming back to life in the future, which is what I thought they were going to do. Turns out he still came back to life in the past, and now he's ready to kill Oliver alongside, I think he had like 2 other goons with him. So we'll see how that plays out, because it's supposed to be 48 hours. So Oliver, I'm assuming, we're hitting the end of the season. So the next episode will be the first 24 hours in the flashback, and then the final episode of the season are going to be the last 24 hours. He's going to kill Dolph Lundgren, he's going to kill the 2 goons, and that's when we are going to see Oliver officially get off the island. And it's crazy to think we finally hit that point. I didn't think we did, because I thought for sure that it had only been, at least at this point, it had only been like 3 years. So I'm pretty sure we're still going to get him going somewhere else. So I'm not sure what's to come, because he was there, supposedly, he was on the island, I believe they said, for 7 years. And I'm pretty sure it's only been like 2 in the flashbacks. Like he went to, or maybe, I guess 3, because of course we had the first year on the island, and then the second year was, or not Russia, but the second year was China, and then this 3rd year was supposed to be Russia. So I believe it's only been 3 out of like the 8. So I don't know where the heck he's headed next, but that's supposed to be the plan. So we'll see what happens. But I'm excited for where they're headed. As far as the flashbacks, this season hasn't been too bad. Certainly better than the last season, where I felt like nothing was really even connected to the actual stories. This one I thought was good. It was about Oliver going back to his home and getting back to being what he felt he should be, which was the person his father wanted him to be. He even has Anatoly watching the video in the flashback. So it's like, all right, it's good to have the the flashbacks tie into the story, where it's Oliver dealing with what his father is and what his father wanted him to be. So I was like, all right, ties in. That's really good. We have our big, our flashback villain come back into play by the end of things. So I'm very excited. I heard that Deathstroke was supposed to show up, potentially. I don't know if that's like a fact just yet. So I'm just saying what I read. I don't even remember when I read that, and I don't know if it was 100%. So maybe we'll see him. Maybe that's why they showed the mask. We'll see him in the flashback or something like that. But very excited for these next 2 episodes. Really curious how the next one is going to end, just to lead to the season finale, because this is already pretty crazy, where Chase is locked up, and yet he's locked up and he escapes all in the next episode, because we see the part where he's talking with Oliver at the end of the promo, like, I think you're about to get a phone call, and then he just struts off like, still in control. So I don't know what to expect going into the end of this next episode, if that's leading us into the finale, but this is certainly a fun one. I'm excited for these last 2. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts. And of course, with Chase being in control, he's still doing everything that he wants to do. He got busted on his own terms and things like that. What is the next step? I mean, it seemed like he was all said and done. Like, it was like, okay, you're not going to be Green Arrow, you enjoy killing, that's it. And now it's like, nope, still got to torture you, got to bring up other things about your family, and none of this is to kill Oliver. So what is the goal? Like, I thought the goal was to make him admit he was a killer, but now it's still going beyond that, and it's almost like to ruin the image of everyone around him, and even Oliver himself eventually seems like the end game, where it's like, you're not only can you not be the Green Arrow, but you can't even be Oliver Queen. I feel like that's where it's truly headed. So we'd love to know your theories on what the heck Chase is trying to do. We still haven't seen what's going to happen with William, so maybe that'll show up at the end of the episode, into next week's episode, going into the finale, but it's just crazy. So we'd love to know your theories, and of course I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.